Okay, so I have a very special video today, and big shout out to JX for this particular footage. And if you're familiar with JX, I will leave his Twitter and his YouTube channel in the link, in the description down below. He does a lot of these showcases before the units actually come out, but he wanted me to do this one in particular just because he, for some reason, doesn't want to do the free-to-play ones, which makes sense because it does seem like the Ginyu Force members are going to be free-to-play, as well as the new LR. I briefly mentioned it in my video. So the way that we are seemingly going to, well, not seemingly, the way that we obtain this new LR Ginyu Force is by getting the Ginyu Force members to 100% in the potential system, and they have their own like potential system currency. So kind of like Goku Junior, you know, the new Gohan. So these units are going to be free entirely, and that brings up the question: why is Bandai just suddenly releasing all these free units? But I'm gonna try to explain everything. Just in the first portion of the video. So what he is doing right now is he is taking on the latest boss rush stage. Every single unit on this team, apart from Super Saiyan Rose, Goku Black, is 100%. So he does have the very first LR Ginyu Force on his team at 100%. Of course, you have Jeice, Recoome, and what you're... there's just so much to go over, and it's exciting. So right here, we have the LR Ginyu Force, 100%. The very first one that, you know, you could obtain. We have the second LR Ginyu Force as well, who, if I'm not mistaken, is in the top 10 hardest hitters, which is very impressive considering that they are support units. Now, to go over what the actual cards can do, we have the Burter, and let's start with the Burter. Let's just go through all the types from agility to, to physical. So when it comes to the Burter, what you do with him is that you put him in the first slot, and he has a high probability to dodge attacks, and he is also a nuker. So he gets an attack increase per orb obtained, and if, okay, this is a big if you put him in the first slot, he is going to have a high probability of dodging, but you have to put him there. So I believe JX is going to put him there, and apparently, no, okay, you didn't put him in that first slot, but you know what, it is what it is. So it's a high probability to dodge if you put the Burter in the first slot. When it comes to the tech types, which of course is the new LR, the new LR is honestly very interesting because he is a support unit, but he is still going to be hitting extremely hard. And you have to keep in mind that he is free as well. Pretty much every single unit on this team, well, seemingly all of these units are free apart from Super Saiyan Rose, Goku Black, because of the special currency for the orbs that the LR Ginyu Force members have. It just definitely indicates that these units are going to be free, because why else would they give you a free 100% unit if it's not going to be free, if that makes any sense. I am definitely leaning towards it being a part of the new Battlefield mode. But let's have a quick look to see if it is on the Dokkan subreddit or Dokkan wiki. Okay, currently not on the Dokkan wiki. So I'm going to quickly jump on the Dokkan subreddit. Again, big shout out to the Dokkan subreddit for the translations. So let's quickly go over it. Okay, I'm going to not read that part. You get a Funky Kai of that unit's type when you 100% any of the new Ginyu Force. So basically, you get the Kai for a particular type to raise the super attack of any of your units. For example, let's say I got the Ginyu right here, the N-type Ginyu to 100%. It will give you a Supreme Grand Kai in return, which is basically the ones that they gave with the Purunga Wishes, okay? But to move on to the LR Ginyu Force real quick and just, go over what they do, or he does, whatever you want to go by. So he gives the free key to the Ginyu Force category, as well as a 100% stat increase. The Milky Cannon greatly raises attack for 1 turn and deals colossal damage. That's the 12 key super attack. The 18 key super attack deals mega colossal damage to the enemy. Raises the attack of extreme type allies by 30% for 1 turn. Now you have the passive. Raises the attack and defense of all extreme type allies by 30%. So he is doing that right now. And raises the attack and defense of all Ginyu Force category allies by an additional 20%. So right now, of course, it's not active, but once we move on to the next rotation, where he is inevitably going to be paired up with a Ginyu Force member, he is going to be giving a 20% attack and defensive increase to that Ginyu Force member, if that makes any sense at all. So basically, the first part of his passive, which raises the attack and defense of all extreme allies, okay, all by 30%. Again, that is just for all extreme type allies. And the second portion of his passive gives a 20% attack and defense to the Ginyu Force members. Now, when it comes to the link skills for the extreme tech one, the extreme LR, just to point out, not the physical one right here, the extreme one, the tech one, pardon me. His main link is going to be, honestly, wow, his set actually kind of sucks. His links actually kind of sucks. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Because of the way that you get him, and the way that you get him, by the way, is he just comes in as an LR. So he isn't going to have Shattering the Limit, and he isn't going to have the Fierce Battle link. So he is very similar to the Super Battle Road Gohan. His main attack link is going to be Ginyu Force, because it gives a 25% attack increase. I mean, he has links like Legendary Power as well, which I suppose he's going to share with LR Black and Zamasu, but it's just kind of like, he doesn't have any key links, basically. His key links are so bad, and yeah, his key links kind of suck, which is definitely going to hurt him, I should say, when it comes to the Extreme Tech team, because that team generally struggles with key links anyway. So I'm very curious to see how well this particular LR that we are watching right now is going to perform against Super Battle Road, but he's performing very well right now. I mean, he is one of the hardest hitting LRs, clearly, despite, you know, being 100%, but even so. Let's quickly move on to the INT Ginyu, and the Ginyu one is, you know, just regular INT Ginyu. He is honestly one of the units that I am more excited for, and the reason why is because it's going to make Super Battle Road a lot easier because of what he can do. So again, to go over what he does, he gives them 2 key to INT types as well as a 30% stat increase. He increases his attack and deals supreme damage to the enemy. So every single time that he super attacks, he is getting stronger and stronger. And here is what happens. So when there is one enemy, he gets free key. He gets a 70% attack and defensive increase. So I believe that's just like that is just the first part of his passive. That is like one entire thing. That when there is one enemy, he gets the free key and a 70% attack and defensive increase. When there are 2 or more enemies, he reduces the damage taken by 50%. So that's like, when it comes to Super Battle Road, here's the thing. You know what? Let's start off with the Dokkan event. With the Dokkan event, he is basically guaranteed to super attack every single time that he's there. And because Dokkan events aren't necessarily like the hardest events to take on in the game, you are going to need that second portion of his passive. So you can tell that this card is particularly made to be useful in 2 different modes, or 2 different modes, events, whatever you want to call them. So the first mode is just regular Dokkan events. When there is 1 or more enemy, the free key, which increases the amount of key that you have, of course, and basically guaranteed a super attack. And he also gets that 70% attack and defensive increase, which just adds towards how well he is gonna tank anyway. And that's not even taking, not even taking into account the fact that we are raising our own attack with every single attack that we get. So that is another good thing about him. And then when we move on to the second portion of the passive, when there are 2 or more enemies, reduce damage taken by 50%. The reason why this is very good for Super Battle Road, you probably guessed it, is because 99% of the time, to be honest, I should say 100%, because you're never going to take on just 1 enemy. But when it comes to Super Battle Road, you're going to be taking on at least 2 enemies. So it is going to activate that second portion of his passive that reduces damage received by 50%, and a 50% damage reduction is much better than a defensive increase. And the reason why is because the boss can't get rid of that damage reduction. That's always going to be there. They can, reduce your defense to the point where it's at like 20k, for example. Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, Cooler, they all get defensive increases from their passives, but if a boss super attacks them, they are going to lose that defense because the bosses can greatly lower defense, or just regular lower. It doesn't matter what it is. They are still lowering your defense, which takes away from their passive defensive increase. That doesn't work on damage reduction. So that is the good thing about this particular damage reduction. Doesn't matter how many times you super attack the Ginyu, he is always going to be reducing that damage by 50% when there are 2 or more enemies, which makes him absolutely perfect for Super Battle Road. Even now, with that defensive increase, he is tanking extremely well. And another thing to keep in mind is that all of these units are free 100%. So again, so far these units have been performing very well. And the fact that they are essentially giving you a free unit of each type to take, at 100% for that matter, to take on Super Battle Road is dope. A bit of a shame that they aren't all necessarily that great, but I'll get into it in a bit. And one unit I actually forgot about was the Guldo, who is also a tech type. So I went over the Ginyu. He's very good for Extreme and Team against just regular Dokkan events, as well as Super Battle Road, but Super Battle Road is most likely going to be his main use. But when it comes to the links, Ginyu Force, Signature Pose, Gentleman, Respects, Loyalty, and Shattering the Limit. to be honest, depending on the team that you're running, Shattering the Limit is most likely going to be a common link. I definitely want to say it's gonna be a somewhat common link there. Shattering the Limit, you know, you have who? Android 13, most likely. I'm trying to think of someone else. Does Android 18 have it? But regardless, there are several units on an Extreme End team that have Shattering the Limit, which will help him super attack. But the thing is, that's only if you're activating the second portion of his passive. If you aren't activating the second portion of his passive, he is still getting the free key. But enough about Ginyu. I think I've gone on about him, you know, long enough. But one unit that I need to go back to is the Guldo. So far, every single unit that I've gone over has a use on extreme type teams, and they're going to be providing something either against a Dokkan event or at the very least against Super Battle Road, because Super Battle Road is like endgame content. So the Yellow Ginyu Force, the GOKU one, is going to be very good on extreme tech because of how hard he can hit and because of what he provides to the team overall. He may not necessarily have the greatest, you know, key links, but he is still going to be providing something there regardless, especially because of how high the stats can get. Now, if we move on to the Guldo, I'm a bit let down by him. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, and it's just the way that his card is. It's like the way that his passive works. They could have made it in such a way that it is going to be activated at all times, but it's just so detrimental against a mode like Super Battle Road that it's just not going to work out that well, unfortunately. And you have to keep in mind that I'm using Super Battle Road as a main example just because that is the toughest event in the game. It's not to say that he is going to be, you know, some of these units are going to be bad on one of the teams or whatever, but when it comes to, you know, their particular teams, especially the Guldo, he isn't going to be very good. And it mostly comes down to the fact that he just doesn't have a spot there against Dokkan events. Like I said, they just, like, that team is already very good with particular units in terms of defense and attack. So having a unit like Guldo that can do what he does, it kind of seems a bit pointless. I can see where they're what they were going for, but because it works the way that it does, it kind of works in an iffy way. But to get into the card, and to be honest, I'm probably just going to have these on the screen just in case you're following me, of course. But wait, one unit that I forgot to mention was the Burter. For extreme agility, the high chance to evade the enemy's super attack is going to be very useful. Okay, granted, he only has a high chance to evade in that first slot, but it still gives you a chance to dodge anyway, and that reduces the amount of damage that you take. So I don't necessarily want to say he's going to be a must-have for Super Battle Road, but he's going to be one of the units that you go to try to beat Super Battle Road with extreme agility. But he is a nuker as well. His main priority, or his main use on that particular team, is definitely going to be the dodging. His main key link, of course, shocking speed, which he's going to share with LR androids. And if I'm not mistaken, Super 17 has that particular link as well. So there is, yeah, I'm pretty certain that Super 17 does have that link. So he is going to share the shocking speed link with a lot of units on that team as well. So his key links are very solid for the team that he is on. But like I said, his main priority is going to be the dodging when it comes to Super Battle Road. But outside of that, he can pretty much do whatever. He's still going to be fitting well on that team regardless because of, you know, that particular shocking speed link and Shattering the Limit as well. Again, depends on what you want to run. But back to the Guldo, finally. So, gives us 2 keys tech types and a 30% stat increase. Deals supreme damage to the enemy with a medium chance to stun. If only that was a high chance to stun, that would make a big, big difference. Because then that would tie in with his passive. Because he reduces the attacked enemy's attack by 20% for 2 turns. If that was like Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta's passive, or even Omega Shenron, where it's just kind of like, you know what? As soon as I'm in play, instant reduction. But no, you have to attack the enemy for the reduction to take place. And here's why that's bad. Let's say, we're going to use Super Battle Road as an example again. Let's say you're taking on Super Battle Road, okay? And you want to make the most of Guldo's lowering attack abilities, because the defensive portion isn't exactly that important. You want to reduce the attack of a particular enemy for 2 turns, okay? And you want to keep him in the first slot or the second slot. But for the sake of the argument, let's just say that we are going to put him in the first slot to maximize the amount of damage that we are going to take. You know, just reduce the amount that we are going to take overall. But what if 3 or 4 of the attacks are in the very first slot before my first super attack? That is where the issue kind of starts. You could get lucky, Granted, he could get lucky, and maybe the attack isn't in that first slot, or in that first position. But a lot of the time, in Super Battle Road, because you're taking on multiple enemies, it is very likely that you can maybe even have up to 6 attacks in that first slot before you super attack. Granted, that's a bit of a stretch, but you want to minimize the amount of damage that you take for the entire rotation. You could, like I say, you could get lucky, and the remainder of the attacks are spread out after you super attack, and in the second spot and the third slot. But it would have been so much better if he didn't have to attack for that to be active. But you know what? I'm not gonna completely say that he's a bad unit, because he definitely has his uses for Super Battle Road, because he reduces the attack and defense for 2 turns. It's not just 1 turn, it is for 2 turns. So it's basically going to happen every time he pops up. So you put him in rotation, it lasts for 2 turns, and the next time that he comes back around, you can keep doing it over and over again. And if you combine it with that stun, it's going to be even better. But the thing about the stun is that it lasts for 2 turns regardless. So if you're stunning that particular unit, it's like, well, what's the point of me reducing his attack and defense if I've stunned him? Because if he's out of commission for 2 turns, then it's going to be like, oh, okay, that's cool and all, but I'm taking no damage anyway. But here's the good thing. Let's say you do stun him, okay? And you also get the 20% attack and defensive reduction, because that's just the way the card works. You can get both the stun and the 20% attack and defensive reduction. And let's say that the rotation comes back round where he's finally unstunned. You can keep reducing the attack and defense of this particular boss. And that is the good thing about this particular passive. You can consistently reduce the attack and defense of this particular boss until it reaches minimal levels. I'm talking double digits. But you're going to have to consistently super attack with the Guldo against this particular opponent multiple times. And that is where the issue arises, okay? Because on the 3rd stage, you're more than likely going to take on a team with maybe 4 or 5 characters. Guldo's passive may be very good for the first 2 stages, where you maybe take on 2 enemies at most, maybe even 3, more depending on who you're taking on, of course. But you do take on 2 or 3 enemies a large portion of the time in the first 2 stages. So Guldo's passive in that situation is going to be solid, because you don't have to focus on that many enemies. But once you move on to the 3rd and 4th stages, that is where you're going to start to encounter a few more issues with consistently making the most of Guldo's passive, which is a bit of a shame, because he definitely does have some uses. It's just it's just simply the fact that they did it in such a way where you have to super attack with him. Well, you don't even necessarily have to super attack with him, so it's whatever. But if you want to get the start off, you have to super attack with him, obviously. But I guess at the very least, the good thing is that you don't have to super attack with him to get the damage reduction to go off. But if you're a super attack, you're kind of missing on a potential stun. And the medium chance is around a 30 to 40% chance, most likely 30. So it's whatever, right? 30% chance. That's like a physical type unit or agility type unit with, their crit chance being maxed out. It happens somewhat frequently, But for units obviously for units that can counter like Vegito, that's just going to be, the rate is going to be way higher, because you have multiple chances to get that crit to go off because of how many times you can counter. But for Guldo, he has 1 chance to get that stun to go off, and if it doesn't go off, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to rely on my passive now. But to be honest, it has its uses and it has its weaknesses for sure. I think it's probably the weakest one of the Ginyu Force, but to be honest, I'm kind of let down by him. I think if he had a high chance to stun, that would be way better. But again, it is what it is. Can't do too much about it. And I'm just gonna say this, but I don't want people think that I'm kind of. I really don't want to swear in my videos, but you know what I mean. That the S word. I don't want people to think that I'm doing that, but I don't know. Just let me know. You know what? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think I'm being too harsh on the Guldo? It's actually kind of funny because it says harsh constraint right there, but I feel like I'm being kind of harsh in some senses, but I'm just looking at it from a Super Battle Road perspective. And even outside of that, he isn't going to be providing much, because you have Ella Black into Master that can heal anyway, Super Saiyan 3 Broly lowers his own defense, so I mean, maybe it could reduce the amount of damage that he takes if you put the Guldo in play. And that is where he could work. That is where he could work. But if he is... You know what? Hold on. How high is his defensive stat going to be after the 100%? That is a good question. Because if Guldo's defensive stat is high enough to the point where he can tank hits... Oh my... His defensive stat is 2,163. So I'm going to take a guess and say that at 100%, his max attack stat is either going to be 5 or 6k. And that could be pushing it. If his defensive stat was higher... You know what? But even then, you could combine him with the LR for that defensive increase. So... Let's see, 30% from, you know, just the raising attack of all allies, plus an additional 20% for the Ginyu force. That is a 50% defensive increase. And LR Ginyu... Oh! You know what? Disregard everything that I said. Well, not really. Don't disregard everything that I said. But I've kind of just thought of something in my head that suggests that, to me anyway, I still need to try it out, and I will try it out for sure, that if you use the LR Ginyu, the new one, the GOKU one, with Guldo, you could have a very solid partnership there on an extreme type team. Especially for Super Battle Royale. And the reason why, for one, they share a lot of links with each other. Okay. The Ginyu Force provides a 50% attack and defensive increase to the Guldo. Okay. And he also provides a further 30% defense. Never mind, it's attack. Well, regardless, okay. The LR Ginyu Force provides a total 50% attack and defensive increase to the Guldo with the passive, and he gives a 30% attack increase to extreme type allies for one turn. And now what I'm thinking is, let's say you have the LR in the very first slot. He should be capable of tanking the majority of the hits that you are coming your way. So that if you have the Guldo in the second spot, he is guaranteed to not get attacked because you are putting him in that second spot. Then you can lower the attack and defense of a particular enemy by that 20% and potentially stun as well. Maybe, okay, just maybe, that particular rotation could work, okay. If you combine the lowering attack and defense of Guldo with the new LR Ginyu, that could work pretty well. That is one thing that I'm going to say, okay. I want your thoughts on that in the comment section down below. I know I'm kind of dragging with the Guldo here, but that just came to mind. I'm just like, wait, if you combine the two, they're both going to be on the same team. If you play with each other, okay, that's not a go there. But if you make them play with each other in a certain way, they could be a very solid force against extreme Super Battle Royale for TEQ. That is definitely a high possibility. But regardless, let's move on to the rest of the cards, because I must have been on Guldo for damn near 10 minutes. But who else do we have? So we went over Agility, which of course was Burter, TEQ, which is LR Ginyu Force GOKU, and the Burter, or Guldo, I should say. Went over the Ginyu. And let's go on to the Jeice, who introduces a very interesting mechanic to passives. Okay, we have seen something like this before in support items, but of course I will get to that in a few moments. 2 key to STR types and a 30% stat increase. Deals supreme damage to the enemy and gives a 20% attack increase for all your allies for one turn. Gives 2 key to extreme type allies. His own attack goes up by 20%. Now this is where things get very, very interesting. Reveals the location of the enemy super attack. As you can see right now on the screen, this is what I wanted to get to earlier, but I kind of put it, off just so that I could go over the cards. But again, you can see that every single card there, apart from Rose, is 100%. And you're going to be able to get these guys to 100% for free, most likely, because they have their own currency. But the Jeice right here is showing the location of the super attack. The way that you can tell if there is a super attack is if it flashes red, like you just saw there. So you can see the blank ones, and when it goes red, that is a super attack. So there is going to be a super attack in that particular slot, which is dope, because now it's like you can see the super attacks. Bit of a surprise that Jeice was the first one to get it, but he's going to work very interestingly on an extreme STR team. I mean, he doesn't necessarily hit that hard himself, like you're about to see. I mean, to be fair, that isn't even that bad. And he is going to get a bigger increase on extreme TEQ as well. Or extreme STR, I should say. Not that much more of an increase, but he's still going to be getting an increase nonetheless. And of course, there's a super attack. But he's given a two keys extreme type allies, which is dope. He gets a 20% attack increase, and he's still going to be hitting relatively hard anyway. Reveals the location of enemy super attacks. That is such an interesting mechanic that I'm surprised hasn't been implemented up until now. Because before, using a scouter item was just a complete waste. There was absolutely no point in using the scouter item because it's just a waste of a slot. You would rather use something like Senzu beans, ushers, yammer, Whis, whatever it is, that a lot of people use. For example, me, I tend to just go with, the usual ushers, yammers, items that reduce damage, because that is just what keeps you alive. So there just wasn't any use in going for the scouter item unless, maybe they open up more slots in the future, which is probably not going to happen because that would just make things even more easier, especially for, Super Battle Road. But now they managed to implement this particular ability into the Jeice, and he's extreme STR. I mean, you aren't going to need that on a villain team because villains can pretty much tank everything anyway. And if you do get super attacks, you have LR Black and Zamasu most likely, that's just going to heal all that up regardless. So it's definitely more of an extreme STR thing for sure. I don't know how much use it's going to have. Maybe against extreme STR Super Battle Road, maybe you want to use your LR Broly and you want to avoid a super attack because LR Broly lowers his own defense. After he super attacks, maybe you want to plan a turn like that ahead. Keep the Jeice paired up with the Broly, or maybe the Broly comes up with the Jeice in one turn because the Jeice was in the third slot. He ends up coming up, Jeice reveals the super attacks. Oh, okay. If I put Broly here, he's going to get super attacks, which would, be terrible for me because he lowers his own defense. So it could work in a, situation like that. But what he still provides, in terms of the key, is still going to be very good because extreme STR tends to have a few issues anyway, especially if you don't have GOKU Black. So it depends on your team for the most part, but what he's going to be providing, regardless of that particular ability, is still going to be very solid. So of course the links: Ginyu 4 signature pose, tag team of terror, Brainiacs, Flea, and Shattering the Limit. Shattering the Limit probably going to be his main key link there. Pardon me, trying to think of who we could use on that extreme STR team off the top of my head. Who do we have? Bojack, if I'm not mistaken. He has a Shattering the Limit link, but I don't necessarily think he's a go-to unit. I'm actually going to hop onto the Dokkan wiki real quick just to see what good units have that particular link on extreme STR, because I would imagine that there are a few here and there. Of course you guys can't see it, but I'm going to be putting the just a translation of the card on the screen as well. So there actually aren't that many units with Shattering the Limit, which is fine because again he is providing the 2 key to extreme STR types at the not even extreme STR types, just extreme type allies at the very least. He doesn't necessarily have the greatest key linked, but he is still providing something with his passive at the very least, which increases the likeliness of you super attacking with, your units consistently. But the units on extreme STR with Shattering the Limit are Great Ape Raditz, Bojack, as well as the Evil Boo, evil Skinny Boo. The Skinny Boo isn't necessarily that bad. The bad thing about him is that he has a flat-out attack increase, and I don't think I've ever pulled him on either version of the game, which is actually kind of wild. And I'm looking at his 12 key multiplier now. He has a 12 key multiplier of 133%, which is kind of odd because units tend to just have rounded numbers, but even so. Back to the rest of the cards, which I believe now is just... yeah, there we go. It's just the Recoome now. So pretty much every single unit so far has some sort of use, apart from maybe Guldo, unless you pair him up in such a way that you can kind of make the most of his abilities, if that makes any sense at all. So now Recoome, 2 key to physical types, 30% stat increase, deals supreme damage to the enemy, and greatly reduces defense. So pretty standard so far. He gets an 80% defensive increase, and he gets a 14% attack increase for every single time that he's attacked, but there is a max of 70. So the most stat he can get in terms of his attack is 70%. But I think the main thing here is that defensive increase. I don't know what it is, but for some reason they've been releasing a lot of units for physical. Even the Gallic Gun Vegeta, he is more of a defensive unit. The Recoome is slightly more of a defensive unit. He does get a bit of a bigger defensive increase, which makes me think, are they trying to make it a bit easier for players to beat the Extreme Physical Super Battle Royale? Because that is most certainly what it looks like. I mean, if you want to use someone like, who am I trying to think of here? The Gallic Gun Vegeta, more of a defensive unit. The Recoome, more of a defensive unit. He has tough as nails, for which I'm not, if I'm not mistaken, is more of a defensive link. That is going to be providing you a defensive increase, and, just for the sake of accuracy, I am going to double check this. But I'm pretty certain that tough as nails is a defensive link. And it definitely seems like they are leaning towards more of the defensive units, because I think they kind of realize that Extreme Physical needs a bit of help when it comes to this. But it is a defensive link. It provides 1,500 defense, which isn't that much, but even so, you have the Super Saiyan Nappa. You have the Nappa from the barbershop. You have King Cold. You have Mira. You have Hachiyak. So all of these guys, they have the Tough as Nails link. Not going to make that much of a difference, unfortunately, but it's still a defensive link nonetheless. It has Brutal Beatdown as well, which is an attack link. Yeah, so Nappa does have it, and it is a 10% attack link, and the physical Omega Shenron has that link, which is great because it's going to be providing him with even more of a attack increase. So just thinking of the rotations now, to be honest, pairing up Omega Shenron and someone like Recoome or even Gallic Gun Vegeta isn't going to be a bad thing to do, just because of the 20% attack reduction Omega Shenron has. So, and that's something that activates straight away. As soon as Omega Shenron is in play, that is going to reduce the attack and defense of your, all your enemies, straight away. And when you combine that with a free 100% unit, like Recoome, that is capable of tanking most things already, it is going to work very well. So there's definitely a potential partnership for that team. He is most likely going to make things a lot easier for Extreme Physical, just because I kind of want to say Extreme Physical doesn't necessarily have too many defensive units. I mean, you have the Cooler, so obviously you're going to run a double Cooler lead. Recoome, a defensive unit, the Gallic Gun Vegeta, more of a defensive unit as well. But for the Gallic Gun Vegeta to work at his best, he needs to be super attacking consistently, because he raises his own defense every time he super attacks. And it kind of goes back to the issue that these units don't have a damage reduction, they have a defensive increase, but because the Recoome is a free 100% unit, he is going to be performing much better than, someone like the Gallic Gun Vegeta, because, I mean, you're most likely not going to get that man to 100%, because it's kind of a waste of orbs, realistically, here. Especially if you're just trying to take out Super Battle Road. But because they are essentially giving you a free 100% unit, it's like, you aren't going to turn that down, especially if it helps you be Super Battle Road. But it is what it is. Again, his links aren't necessarily that great. None of their links are necessarily that great. But I've gone over every single unit here. And that took a while. How much time did I spend on this? Hold on. How much time did I spend on this? Damn near 30 minutes on this. Wow. The time flies by. I was having a lot of fun, though. Explaining those units? Damn, son. Okay, again, big shout out to JX for this gameplay. I hope you guys managed to keep up with me there. But that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, don't forget to check out JX in the description. Big shout out to him for the gameplay yet again. I hope you guys have a wonderful day as always. And if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing if you are new, of course. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next one.